this ngen tips for writing a winning entry. Most of it's Brett's, I'm not going to claim it as my own, but you know, I'm here to present it this year. First of all, I think one of the key tips is to start now. I think it's very, very easy to wait till the last minute and crank out a last minute entry, but read the brief, and while you've still got fresh thoughts in your mind, definitely just write down first thoughts. They could be the best ones that you have. Keep it as simple as possible as well. Simplicity, make sure that you've got a really clear argument. And you've just got to remember that there's loads of entries that are judged each and every year. I think last year there was over 55 entries, and you know, a judge has got to go through all of them. So the more clear your argument is, the better. And just try to create a clear theme and kill all the things that you might have thought of throughout the writing process but are deemed irrelevant to the actual brief itself. And while we're at it, make sure you do a bit of a spell check. I think that's one of the worst things that judges find, is people not just doing those little bits of attention to detail. It may sound simple, but it's easy to forget. And not to mention a bit of poor layout. You know, you've got clear things, and you'll see the structure for your responses. Just make sure that you know you stick to that as much as possible, and make sure, yeah, you don't have any these urinal type moments. Also, tell a story. Everyone's responding, all of you will be responding to the same brief, and so you need something that's going to make sure that you stand out. Draw them in from your first sentence onwards. And stories have real intrigue and real drama about them, so try and treat it like a story. It will definitely help your entry. Also, you know, you need to keep the judges interested, and so just cull the irrelevance as well. That means not putting everything that you did into the entry. And be as creative as possible. What is there to lose? You know, just try and again stand out and think about you know, putting yourself out there and making sure that you make your mark on the ngen Awards in 2011. And just think about how you could build on that through including interesting imagery that's not included within the word counts. Also, read even more. Ask your agency if there's any sources that they have that will particularly help you, but also there's things like the Media Federation can line previous winners, and also ad news that can be used as good stimulus. And in terms of structure, as we mentioned before, there's a clear layout, but just don't try and regurgitate everything that's in the brief. Go beyond the obvious as well, and make sure that you have a really clear insight that helps deliver the idea onwards. And also think about, on the idea itself, just thinking about how it can flow naturally throughout the brief, your response to the brief. And also, why not give it a name? You know, create a logo for it. Again, something that's going to make you stand out and really sort of clearly mark your entry. Just think about how you can mock it up. On the media strategy itself, make sure that the idea is at the heart of it, and make sure that everything that you write down really integrates your idea. Think about the flighting as well, and make sure that each channel has a really clear role for how it responds to the brief and how it builds on your response. And just think about how you can amplify it and bring the idea to life, and just think about the visuals and innovation that we talked about before. And also just remember, you know, you're here today to find out about this brief, and it's so easy to let time get away from you, and before you know it, you know, the deadline's up. But you have to be in it to win it, and there's plenty of experience that you can gain just from entering this year. So really, it's a fantastic thing to do, and will really help. And so, onto the brief itself, and we're really excited about this brief. The ones in the past have been fantastic as well, and this time in 2011 we found a charity in ACON that I think is really relevant for everyone here in Australia. I'll just go through parts of the brief just to give you some context, and then you can ask any questions after it. If you've got a pen, maybe you want to start writing those thoughts down now. But just in terms of the context, In Australia, violence experienced in the gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender communities is higher than that experienced by other communities. Up to 85% of the people within the GLBT communities have experienced homophobic or violence in their lives. 60% have experienced verbal abuse and 14% have experienced physical abuse. Now, ACON is a community-based organisation which promotes the health and well-being of the GLBT community, and it also is there to provide knowledge and experience covering areas including discrimination and also social isolation of those communities. The violence experienced by this community starts really, really early, and is particularly pertinent in schools. And schools are the most dangerous place for 14 to 17-year-olds, with abuse experienced by almost 9 out of 10 of the GLBT community, which really shows the scale of the problem. And violence and harassment occurs in the context of homophobia, discrimination or prejudice, and has a disproportionate impact on young people. And they don't really have necessarily the skills and resources to deal with it at that time in their life. And the impact of this violence is really, really stark. Everything from negative health outcomes to people disengaging from education, which is obviously a huge problem in such an early age. But it also triples the likelihood of self-harm, which is a massive, massive issue, and can also lead to drug abuse and drastically increase the rates of suicide by up to 14 times, which is, yeah, really quite stark. The role of communication for this year's brief is twofold. First of all, we want to empower youth communities to discuss and take responsibility for homophobic bullying. And second of all, we want to ensure bullying based on sexuality is deemed unacceptable, especially within schools. And just one final thing, who we're talking to is secondary school students aged 13 to 17, and also their parents, and also people with influence over secondary school students, in particular the media and youth culture celebrities as well. So I think, you know, one thing that we want to make sure of is that you use a consumer insight as a real jump-off point for this brief. And the consumer insight that we focused on is that many teenage Australians are scared of the things that they don't understand. Misunderstanding often turns to fear and manifests itself in bullying. But bullying is not simply suffered by the GLBT community. Straight people can also be subjected to bullying for being perceived to exhibit stereotypical gay behaviours. If young people in the community were more aware of the issue and the incidence of homophobic bullying, they could be significantly reduced. And so your task with this brief for ACON this year is to reduce the incidence of verbal and physical bullying of the gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender youth. So there are plenty more details in the brief, but we just want to sort of focus today on the consumer insight and the real challenge that has been set for the ACON brief. So if there's any questions that anyone has at this stage, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise,
I'll just add one thing. So like previous years, this insight is deliberately broad. It's there to give you a way in. It's kind of like what I'd like to call the tip of the iceberg. There's loads, as Sarah said, there's loads more info available on this most important subject matter. So we encourage you to take your own initiative and absolutely move that insight into something that's a little bit more pointy and can lead your idea and your solution. The brief, I think, is brilliant and captures it from a broad macro perspective. So please use your own initiative, get out there, ideally find some of the people suffering from this, talk to them. If not, use desktop research or anything available to you to find out more about it, and put your own line in the sand on this as a jump-off point.
I think that certainly gives you all an opportunity to stand out. There isn't one answer. There's plenty of different solutions, and certainly with the $1 million that you've been given to make this happen, I think if only it was literally $1 million that you were all given, but you know there's plenty of opportunities for real insight and inspiration and innovation. So thank you for coming, and like I said, any questions, feel free to ask us.